Hi, folks. Can everyone hear me okay? I suppose you actually can't respond to me. Someone from my team, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so welcome. I am Michelle Mullen, and we're going to get started. So I see that people are busy joining, and we will give people a couple of minutes to jump on, but as we're waiting, I just want to go through our housekeeping items. Let's see. So just so you folks know, we're recording this webinar today in the event that other people want to see it, or if you would like to review it again after our discussion. We've been told that it makes a difference for audio if you move your cell phones away from your computer. And so if you have any issues during today's discussion, everyone is automatically muted. So we have Dee's email up here, so if folks want or need to contact her, please do. She's lovely, and she'll respond to you right away. There's also a chat function in the control panel, should you need that. So the other thing that we just want to make note of before we get started is that we will leave 10 to 15 minutes at the end. Hopefully I won't chat too much, but we will leave 10 to 15 minutes at the end to be able to review any of the questions that you have. So in the questions tab, we would like for you to kind of jot down any questions that you may have, and someone from our team will be putting those together as we chat, or as I chat, and then at the end, we'll kind of read out some of the most commonly asked questions and answer those. So hopefully we'll leave enough time for questions at the end so everyone can feel satisfied. So once again, my name is Michelle Mullen, and today's discussion is to talk about developing partnerships for HYPE research sites. So I'd like to introduce my team that are on the call right now. I have introduced Dee Logan. She'll be helping any kind of technical issues, so thank you, Dee, for helping us today. Marcia Ellison is also on the line. She is a co-director of this project. Kathleen Sabella, who can't be here today, is critical to this project, as well as Amanda Costa and Ian Lane. So thank you guys for being here and supporting this project. I want to go over the agenda for our call today. We think that it's probably helpful to frame some of these things before getting into the commitments and some of the application questions. So if you already have questions that you know of that you would like to ask based off of the application, please type those in now. For everyone who submits an application to become a HYPE site, we will be arranging individual calls with your organization, with you, presumably if you're on this call, and your organization, anyone interested regarding the application or the process. Hopefully we'll get most of the questions about the process over today, but if not, then we still have some individual time. Okay, so for our agenda, welcome. We'll talk a little bit about HYPE's history, what we would like to learn from this project, what the project is, and some of your commitments and our process for site selection. And then we'll finish up with our tentative or presumed timeline and some next steps. So once again, thank you for joining us today, and we're really excited that you guys have even showed this amount of interest. Okay, so let's move through some of our acknowledgements. NIDLR has funded this project and the previous project, and we are deeply indebted to them, and we are big fans. So HYPE is a part of a larger center at UMass, iSpark, and our intention at Transitions ACR is to help young adults 14 to 30 with being able to fulfill those roles of employment and education so that they can they have fully social valued roles, right? So to start a little bit about HYPE's history. So sometimes, as you folks know, researchers bring these great ideas to practitioners and say, we should try this. We've come at this a little bit differently in that we are researchers, but our intervention is based in practice. So in 2008, we developed in New Jersey. At the time, I was a part of Rutgers University, or UMD&J, really back then, and we developed an integrated career service called LEARN, Learning Enhancement and Resource Network, and that was the support education arm of the support employment. And we were funded by the division at the time of New Jersey, Division of Mental Health, to integrate support education within support employment, because support employment alone was not achieving the outcomes of self-sufficiency, economic self-sufficiency. So in 2008, we started this practice. We called it LEARN, and essentially this is HYPE's parent. So this was for any adult 18 and over, and the idea was that we would integrate and prioritize education as a vocational step to achieve the employment outcomes that people wanted. As we all know, for those of you who are in support employment, I'm guessing that a large number of you on this call are related to support employment, is it's very difficult for people to get jobs that pay a livable wage without higher education. So just as most of you have done on this call, you pursued your education to get the job that you want. So our experience has come from practice. We integrated these services, we learned from the practice components, and then we started a research project in 2008, about the same time that we started LEARN services, to be able to evaluate the efficacy of the combined support employment, support education approach. And we learned a lot from both practice and research. So in 2012, we applied to NIDLR to be able to take this model and ensure that it is relevant for young adults. So we conducted project activities that so we could feel fully confident that young adults would benefit from this specific service. As we know, young adults have different needs than older adults. And so a part of this first project from NIDLR in 2012, it was a 5-year project, we developed a manual, a HYPE manual, and piloted it with support employment services. We also created a web-based community of practice. And both of these tools will be used in this next version of HYPE's testing. So for those of you on the call, I'm hoping that you know a little bit about HYPE. We here have the website for HYPE if you want to know more, and hopefully you do. But as I said, HYPE is really focused on prioritizing education early on for young adults with the intended outcome of being able to improve employment outcomes later. So what we found in practice was for people who were involved in support education, they had higher employment rates than those who were in supported employment alone. What we saw is people came in and they said that they wanted to go to school. We helped them to get into school, and then as they became more and more successful at school, they realized, oh, I should get a job to get experience in this, or I can get a job to get experience in this, or I need to get a job for money. And so we had higher rates of employment outcomes in support education, those are people who are interested in education, than those people who are interested in employment alone. And this was a real aha moment for us, because what we realized is that all the things that we have been doing up until this point has not been typical for anyone, right? People go to school and go to work at the same time, and services need to be able to do that. So by blending support education and support employment, we were able to respond to both support employment and support education needs, help people go to school and go to work, and they can choose, right? And it's like braided. So sometimes you're working, sometimes you're going to school, sometimes you're doing both. So HYPE then focuses on being able to respond to people's needs, both work and school, concurrently. And for young adults, we believe that it's very, very important to actively work on maintaining the identity of a young adult. Everything changes. You have no idea the person you're going to be in 2 years. Like, let's not make rules. Let's figure out what we're going to do. Let's support you. Let's be positive. The idea is that you are changing all the time, and what you're experiencing today doesn't mean that you'll be experiencing it tomorrow. So we try to focus developmentally on expanding experiences, values, interest, because you never, ever know. And the cornerstone, theoretically, of ours is this idea of career happenstance. Like, every experience pivots you a little bit to getting the job that you want or the major that you want. I'm sure if you guys think about your experiences, you didn't think you were going to end up where you are now, but there were these couple of things, like couple of experiences or meetings with a professor or jobs that you had, and it just pivots how you move. And so we want to ensure that we pivot how young adults move in a positive direction towards economic self-sufficiency, and we want to actively move away from this idea of developing a disability identity. And we believe that happens through the application and enrollment in Social Security. So one of our goals, and one of the goals of this project that some of you will want to participate in, is to deter from SSI. We'll help people get insurance that they need, but our intention is to move people away from the tethering to cash benefits. We recognize that programs need to be reimbursed, and we want for that to happen, but we know that SSI is a trap for lots of people. So we want to actively work against the development of disability identity. One of the big things now, how I think about this for myself, is we want to help young adults persist. We want to help them develop the skills to persist and the mindset to persist. And so we are really focusing on academic persistence and vocational persistence in this project. So we believe by developing highly specialized supports and helping young adults develop really good executive functioning skills, time management, task management, prioritizing tasks, that we can together achieve these outcomes of economic self-sufficiency and persistence and resilience. So the link is here if you guys want to go and learn more about HYPE, but essentially that's what it is. One of the things that I just want to make note of, I'm not going to go through HYPE's values and principles, but sites that are best suited for HYPE are sites that are consistent with our values and our principles. So the values that we hold are really kind of like the guiding map, right? The guiding principles, or the map, because I use principles for another part of the discussion. But what are the things that we want practitioners to do? And we want practitioners to be helpful, flexible, solution-focused. We want them to be partnering, and we want them really to think about, would someone who is this age be doing the same exact thing if they didn't have a psychiatric diagnosis? And often we kind of lose sight of that. So helping people stay young and not become enmeshed in this kind of disability identity. So when we think about our values and principles, they're also criteria for the site, because we think that you can't really do career development services for young adults in the absence of these values. And some of the principles that we espouse and are in our fidelity assessment are here. The ones that are identified or bolded in red are ones that are different from other supported employment programs and evidence-based supported employment programs. So if you are interested in learning more about this, either for your application or for yourself, please, here's the website once again at the bottom of the site, but it's very easily to find on our website for HYPE. So please go there and check it out. Okay, so what do we, the UMass folks, want to learn from this project? So we have three kind of big, overarching questions. Can we affect student persistence? So what are the services that make a difference? What are the student-level factors that influence if someone drops out or stays in school? And we're hoping that these questions that we ask of the young adults and of you will help us to inform any kind of intervention service and support development, but also to inform the field. For a very long time, we always thought that people with mental health conditions who go to college drop out because of symptoms, but we're now learning different things. We also thought that they had poor grades, and so from our previous research, what we've seen is that college students with mental health conditions, their grades are fine. 2.7, 3.0, they're not academically struggling to perform. What they're struggling with is that persistence. It takes so much personal effort because they're not supported very well that they can't endure semester after semester after semester, right? So think about, if some of you are in school now, you know exactly what I mean. It's a slog, and so if you don't have the supports or the factors to help you get through that, then we see higher rates of students dropping out and reentering. So we want to help students persist, to stay in school longer and to graduate sooner. The sooner you graduate, the more time you have to maximize on your degree. And we want people to graduate, right? So that's the other outcome that we're looking for. The other thing that we want to know, to be able to inform insurance companies and states and counties, is how much does it actually cost to provide career services to young adults. So we'll be asking data like that related to programming so that we can say, in these areas, this is what it costs. But this type of geographic spread, this is what it costs. So we want to be able to inform decision makers because they're largely uninformed about what it takes. And we know that there have been policies put into place recently that help young adults get into college, but not the funding to stay in school. So we'll be able to answer that too, which is, how can WIOA be better refined in the future so that services can be reimbursed for helping maintain matriculation, that idea of persistence. And then the last thing are, what are the policy changes that we would recommend to ensure that we can help the system move from this very employment-focused service delivery system to a career development service delivery system. If we want young adults to look like other young adults without mental health conditions, then we have to provide this level of support to be able to help them stay in the same roles and do the same things as students that aren't struggling, or young adults that aren't struggling with the things that they're struggling with. But what that means is that services need to be developmentally relevant and focused for this group, which is going to school and work at the same time, at different times, right? So it's like that kind of like braided path. So we need for policy to be able to be reflective of that. So this project is answering these three questions. What do we do in services? How much does it cost to do these things? And then how can we inform the decision makers of how to make these services more accessible and funded so programs can actually do it? So I'm going to take a little bit to describe to you the study. I said earlier that this webinar talk will be recorded and posted on the website. So everyone who is registered will get a link to the webinar so you can look at this later. So this is a randomized control trial of HYPE. So we've developed the manual, we've tested it, we've made revisions. We know what it looks like in practice, but not in a research study through Learn. But we want to know in a randomized control trial, are HYPE services effective to keeping young adults in school and getting jobs, right? So this is what we want to look at, both the employment outcomes and the education outcomes. So we will help programs to do this. So we're hoping that this is alike to your current positions already, that you have supported employment, supported education providers, or at least you're reimbursable for those. And so your program staff would do the services that they're intended to do, and perhaps enhanced through HYPE, but they would be HYPE services. And you would provide us data, and we would provide you with good training, technical assistance, and support. And we would also provide some level of funding for a new person to do recruitment, data collection, and the control condition. So sites would only be responsible for providing HYPE services, and then the research would be done on the research side. So programs aren't being asked to do research, they're just being asked to provide high-quality services, which I'm sure you guys already do. So as a part of the study, we're asking for HYPE to be provided for at least 1 year. I'll get to this in another slide, but we're asking for programs to be able to recruit and serve up to 25 young adults for over the course of 2 years. So some people can do, 13 and 13 or 13 and 12 each year. It could be rolling. Some programs may have adequate space on their rolls to take 20 people as they come, but these are the types of things that we can talk about, but the expectation is that 25 people per site would be served. The length of time that we would collect data for people would depend on when they come into the study. So, but all participants would have at least 1 year of data collected on them. So services are individualized, which makes this a little bit tricky, right, to make sure that it's standardized and from like a research perspective. So there's practice and then there's research. And so some of the things that we want to ensure is that your practice is high quality and that we're giving you what you need. But the other component is can we say with confidence that HYPE is what's responsible for these changes? So there's that research component. So services are individualized. People get what they need, and they shouldn't get more than what they need, and they shouldn't get less than what they need. So services are individualized, and as a component of HYPE, we have a FAST intervention. So FAST is a curriculum. It's 12 weeks, and it's focused solely on developing executive functioning skills. So for the first 4 months of service, it is expected that at minimum 2 hours of service would be provided to a young adult. An hour of support, like, hey, what are the things that you need? Or we have to get you connected with financial aid, or, we saw that, you have to get connected with disability services, let's just say, as examples. And then a separate hour would be on this FAST curriculum, which would be the time management. So for the first 4 months, you're developing executive functioning skills and providing needed levels of support. And over time, that titrates down. I think for any of you who are on the call here that have provided support education for a long time, our experience has been that people need a good amount of support over the first year, getting themselves set up, you developing skills, getting them connected to resources. And as young adults develop more skills and they get more immersed in their community, because that's what we want, they need less and less supported education and supported employment services. So, but over time, practitioners decide how much time, and practitioners and the young adults decide how much time that they need. But we expect for the first 4 months that it's at minimum 2 hours a week. All of those are billable, though. So study participants would be new to your services. They have not been in supported education or supported employment within the last year. They could be part of your larger organization, but could not be an existing person in services. So as I had said earlier, we will provide some funding to hire a person to be able to help with recruitment. In our studies in the past, and we've run 2 large trials like this, that recruitment specialist has been critical and so important to getting people in. So it relieves the obligation of staff, but also has someone out in the community posting flyers on community campuses, things like that. So they have to be new to services. A young adult has to be between 18 and 30. So that typically covers undergraduate, and it covers some graduate students. They have to have a diagnosis of a mental health condition, and here we are pretty liberal with what a mental health condition is. We understand that this age group, many people are kind of evolving in diagnoses, but what some people say, well, is it a serious and persistent mental health condition? And my perspective is that some people don't think anxiety is a serious mental health condition, but what it does do is it gets in the way of showing up at class and taking your exam. And so what that means is that you drop out from college. And when you drop out of college and you can't get a good job, over time you hear the message that you're too sick to work, and then you enroll in Social Security, and then you become too sick to work. So that one anxiety condition can actually develop into something much larger. So for me, and for this grant, we consider a mental health diagnosis as adequate for this study. We are asking for students to be enrolled in college, so either a 2-year or 4-year school. They have to have at least be enrolled in at least 2 courses, 6 or more credits. and they have to expect to be maintained for the next 2 years. So a student can't come in and say, like, oh, yeah, I think I'm only going to go to school for this semester. Then that wouldn't work, because we are looking at students who expect to be students, who want to be a student and to graduate and get a job, right? So this is not for students who are just like picking up a class, but it's really intended to help young adults who are interested in school. One of the things that I didn't note earlier, which I should have, was NIDLR's grant. That's the funding source. This grant was called College to Career Success. So what they are specifically looking for are, how do you help young adults, college students with mental health conditions, graduate from college and enter into the workforce. So this is what our study is answering, that question for them. Sorry, I didn't say that earlier. So they have to be college students. They have to be registered for 6 or more credits, 2 classes. They have to expect to be staying in school. That's their intention. And they cannot have a secondary diagnosis at this point with autism, TBI, or another neurological condition. We believe that all of those folks should be served, and we believe that HYPE eventually will be able to serve folks like that who have these conditions. However, to be able, this manual as it stands right now is for mental health conditions. We have an intention of developing it to include autism, but at this point, this study specifically is for mental health conditions. So we just don't want to have to attend to other things that we weren't planning for. So while this is in the future, right now, we cannot deliver on those diagnoses. I know it's disappointing. So are you excited? After all that, are you still excited? Because we are. So we want to talk a little bit about commitments and how sites are selected. But if the idea of really thinking about and partnering with us on, like, how do we actually change the lives of young adults, and how do we become more intentional with our services and really affect persistence, helping people stay in school and graduate and get good jobs, then this is the project for you. If it's not so exciting for you, then perhaps it's not. Okay, so the ideal site already has supported employment and supported education services. Some programs or projects or programs keep them separate. We would like for those programs to work in tandem. But we realize that sometimes requires some kind of back-end stitching. We've done a lot of that in some of our program development work with other community organizations. So if that's the situation where you are, that they're separate but they work together, that's fine. If you have developed your services so they could be integrated, that's great too. But we really need for programs to be able to reimburse for services. We have tested this with some programs that cannot reimburse for services, and it creates a lot of difficulty on program staff, a lot of burden on the program. Even if values-wise you're in line, it makes it very, very difficult to do. Ideal sites have permanent staff positions, so they have existing FTEs, that there are staff that are hired and they are specifically within that program, permanent staff positions. While people say, it's like concrete things, I believe that values and passion are really, really important, because, we do hard work, and you need those things to be able to kind of get you through. So values, consistent values and passion for what we do is, that's really important to me, and it makes these types of things more enjoyable, I think. An ideal site needs to be community-based, so you have to be able to travel where the student or the young adult is, so provide services in and around local colleges. So while I didn't say this earlier, I was a support employment and support education provider. That's what I did, and I liked going out and meeting students on campus and helping them set up their study space. It allowed a different type of interaction, I think, and you develop a different type of relationship. So community-based services are critical, both for the outcome and for the process. We've worked with organizations that have struggled with providing services immediately after referral. So for this project, for those of you that serve young adults, you know that there's a small window of opportunity. When someone wants to do something, or if someone thinks that they need help, like, you need to answer the call, and you need to be there, you need to be present, and you need to want to help. And so services need to be able to provide it after referral. So some folks had a difficulty with going through VR or getting pre-authorizations, and that there was a lag between referral and first meeting, or first meeting and when services began, and that lag was very, very difficult to overcome because engagement had waned. So ideal sites, as I said earlier, need to be able to provide services to 25 new people over the course of the next 2 years. And one of the things that I really like about partnering and working with organizations is that we're not only asking for you to want to learn and get feedback, but we want it too. So we're ideal sites believe in that reciprocal relationship, like, hey, Michelle, this is what we realized, like, your manual is missing this. Can you do something about it? Absolutely. Yes, we want that, right? So being able to develop a relationship and a good relationship where information and feedback is solicited, like, hey, how can I do this better? I'm really struggling with this, and we do the same. So those are the ideal sites, in my opinion. So you are probably asking, so what are the commitments for this, and can we talk about this more? And the answer is yes, we can talk about it more for sure. So there are these, to be able to, we have struggled a little bit in how best to articulate this, but this is a phased process. So the short-term commitment is that people apply if they're interested in being a site, and they commit to the long-term goals of serving 25 people, providing HYPE services, providing data to us, and participating in technical assistance. And the reason we are doing this phase-wise process is that we have been funded by NIDLR to train 6 sites and to select 3 for the trial. So we understand that a lot of things happen over time. So to ensure that we have the sites that can test HYPE, because we know that programs want to do better and they want to learn and they want to participate, but sometimes things happen, and so we need to over-select for the research sites in the event that something happens. So I'll go back to the earlier commitments, but just to understand the process, which is application, those applicants are selected to participate in HYPE training, and those that do well in providing the service and meeting fidelity then are selected for the HYPE research site. So the short-term commitment is to participate in 5-day in-person training. And so here you'll be trained in HYPE, but most of our time will be training you in FAST, which is that 12-week curriculum on executive functioning skills. And I can tell you, and Amanda can tell you too, she's on the call, she's currently doing this with young adults, is that they love it. They love it. They want to know how to calendar. They want to know how to prioritize tasks. They want to figure out how to do things in like a smart and effective way. They want to figure out how to do note-taking better. So they are really engaged. This answers their need. So whenever people say to me, like, we have a hard time engaging young adults in our program, I sometimes say this to them, but I often think it, which is you're not meeting their needs. If you are doing what young adults need to be successful in the things that they choose, they come, and they are happy to come, and they're excited to come. They may not always be happy with the things that you do specifically, like, oh, I hate this application, but they understand that it's connected to the greater good, right? That's getting them where they want, and this FAST intervention is one of them. So our 5-day training is an in-person training, and you may be asking yourself, can all of my staff be trained? Most supported employment, support education programs aren't very large, and so we want to train all staff and supervisors. Supervisors need to be trained with staff. So, I mean, if you have a 15-person department, I will sit down at your table and ask you everything that you're doing, because I want to be able to know, to be able to tell the people to do the same thing, because we love departments that big, but it's often uncommon. So, but we will train your group. The short-term commitment is after we train you that you actually provide the services, kind of like test folks, to people that you're working with, and that you participate in group and individual technical assistance. And what I call this technical assistance, really functionally, are roundtables. We get everyone together. We would do it virtually, and we would share webcams, and we would say, like, okay, so who are you working with? What are you struggling with? Like, let's think this through. What are intentional services, right? How do we meet the need that people are experiencing? So, so we want people to participate in individual and technical assistance, and that is ongoing throughout the course of the training. Over the course of the training. Sorry, I just got word that my webcam wasn't working. I'm unsure if it's working now or not. And if you haven't seen my excitement up until this point, I'm really sorry. I've been very excited. Okay. So participate in a 5-day training, participate in group and individual technical assistance, and use the tools in the manual throughout this process, kind of getting used to both hype, the tools, the process, and so people will say, well, how many people do we have to serve? And ideally, if you're participating in this trial, you'll be transitioning your services to hype services. So, and remember, hype is both employment and education. It's not just education services. So some people are like, well, we do IPS for our employment folks and hype for our education folks. And that's not how it works. So, and we can talk more about that, which is like, what are the things that are need to be modified depending on what services you currently provide now. So we ask for each practitioner during this process of the short-term commitment, the training process, to provide services to 2 or 3 people each, like figure out how to do the FAST intervention, right, that curriculum, figure out how to use a particular tool. And you can do with all the folks that you're working with, and that's fine, but sometimes knowing that these are like, okay, I'm testing this on one person, and I often say to folks, like, if you tell someone, like, I'm learning this too, can we like struggle along with this together? Like, young adults love that. They understand the idea of struggling along, right? So partnering with the young adults to be like, we're learning this too, can you really help me out? And so then the other short-term commitment is to prepare for the site review and fidelity review. So the site visit and the fidelity review helps us to determine, are these things working at your site, and can we say that these programs are providing hype services? So the long-term commitment then is services to 25 folks, providing high fidelity hype services, which includes FAST, which is that executive functioning curriculum, as I had stated, and providing timely service data, and meeting with us and telling us how things are going, and supplying information about fidelity. So that's a long-term commitment. And as I said earlier, the idea is that we're preparing sites to implement hype training and technical assistance. So we'll be selecting organizations. So to be selected for the project, when we know that people want to provide really great services, and sometimes it's just not the right timing. So if it's not the right timing for you and your organization to participate as a research site, which has different rigors or different expectations, I guess you could say, because you're providing us with data and we're talking a lot. There may be other things that we can do together. So if you're not ready to apply as a research site, we encourage you to reach out to us if there's something else that we can do. But sites will be based on their application and their individual calls. So after people submit an application, we arrange a call for the week of December 17th, which we'll get to in a second. And sites will also be based on that conversation. Sites will also be selected based on number of young adults that you previously enrolled. So if you struggle to get young adults in services, that may be something that we can think about. The proximity to colleges, who's around you, and can we recruit enough people for your site? What's your site structure and your policies and your programming, including engagement and discharge policies? What are your outcomes and process for employment and education in the past? And are you committed to enhancing the lives of young adults. And I know that sounds kind of cheeky, but we really mean it. So we sometimes struggle with programs that see young adults as a burden. And if you see young adults as a burden, this isn't a good program for you, because we like it. We like it. We figure it out as we go. So then the second phase, we determine who comes in for training. We train folks. We have a great time. Everyone learns. We develop a great relationship. And then based on how the training phase goes, we identify of the 6 programs that we bring in, 3 that will participate. I also just want to make note that we are in discussion with other funders to expand this research trial. So there may be opportunities for more than 6 providers to be trained and more than 3 sites to enter into the research trial. Right now, we can't say that definitively, but right now we have funding for 6 sites to be trained and for 3 sites to enter into the research trial. So if that changes, we will definitely let folks know, and we'll kind of keep people abreast of that. But determination for the research trial will be based on training and technical assistance. How did people come to our meetings? Were they prepared? Did they have things to say? Are they interested in providing services? Were the quality of their services high quality? We understand the learning curve, right? So when I say high quality, it doesn't mean perfect. It means a practitioner that says, Michelle, I cannot figure out how to do this. Like, how do we figure this out? That is a high quality service. You do not need to know the answer. You need to be able to ask for help, right? Because I can train anyone on anything. Oh, that sounds, you know what I mean. But if you're not willing to get help, help cannot be provided, right? So if you're not interested in providing good services, it doesn't matter what we can provide to you. So high quality isn't just what you do for the person, but it's the process by which your practitioners operate, right? So high quality services, engaged, interested, want to do better. So we'll also be looking at outcomes, and we'll also be looking at how the site and fidelity review went. And so for me, relationships really matter. So we are a fun group to work with. We have high expectations, but who doesn't, right? But we know that relationships make this type of work easier. So if we have a very good relationship and the training goes well, and so we're hoping that we'll have a hard time selecting our 3 research sites. We're also hoping that we'll get additional funding so we can expand it, but relationships definitely matter in this process. So these are the next steps. We know that this is tight for timing, and so the way that this funder works is that you don't get a lot of lead time for the proposal and the application, the receiving of the funding. And we had a very ambitious timeline because we wanted to be able to start for the next academic year. So applications will be December 11th. We encourage questions at the end of this. I think this is my last slide. So if you have applications, please do not, if you have questions about the application, do not hesitate to reach out. They're due on December 11th. We'll be scheduling individual site calls on the week of December 17th. I think that you folks, when you apply, you'll see what days and times can you make during the 17th. We'll identify sites by January 9th, and the training of programs will begin in February. So that's fast. And so we can be somewhat flexible on this. But it really depends on the program. So that is up for discussion. We want folks to implement HYPE as soon as you're trained. And so there'll be both group and individual technical assistance that starts after the training ends. So you get immediate contact. Okay, so theoretically this is what you learned, but now in practice, how do we do it, right? So, and that's the fun part. So, and then in June, we'll do site reviews and fidelity assessment. Are you doing the things? Is there evidence that you're doing the things that we're chatting about? And then the research site selection will happen in July, and then we'll begin the HYPE trial in August and September. So we want to be able to be ready, which then the trial means that we'll hire folks, you'll hire a person for your program to do data collection and recruitment, we'll get the IRB, we'll flyer at your local community colleges and state universities, private institutions, whatever's around you. And so then HYPE will start at the beginning of the fall semester in 2019. So ambitious, but if you're already providing support employment and support education, you're in a better position to take advantage of this opportunity. So we thought, all right, so this sounds pretty amazing to us, but some people may wonder, what's the benefits of our organization? So we think that these are the benefits, right? That you get innovative and cutting-edge program that's based both in research and in practice, that you get great technical assistance and training, and it's free. And I think arguably what the difference is with HYPE is that our manual and our training and technical assistance is intended to develop intentional services. So we believe in knowledge, but we really believe in skills and resources. So what our manual and what our training and technical assistance has to offer is when a student is struggling with this is what you do, right? So often what we see is that providers who are new to support education don't really know how to best support a college student in college. So that's what we are able to offer. We have trainers, including myself, that have provided support education services for decades or more. And I kind of hate to say that, but yep, for more. Or I guess that's a good thing. But so we want for folks to kind of think about, okay, so what's the barrier? What's the need? What do I do? So this idea of intentional services, because when you move from reactionary services, like, oh, here is a disruption or here's a crisis, but when you can say, okay, what are the things that we need to get in line for this semester so that there are no problems, you move from helping students to kind of respond to helping students prepare. And when we move to prepare, we are preventing disruptions. So we want to be able to avoid those disruptions and keep students in class. So if we think about a benefit to an organization is help in thinking about how do I create intentional services, and you then also have both training and technical assistance, but also a manual that helps you do that. And the manual is created to have practitioner guides, so a practitioner can just pull a sheet and look at it like, how do I support someone in the financial aid process, or dropping out, or moving classes. The other thing that I think that we can offer outside of our intervention is being able to assist your organization in evaluating your outcomes so that you can really look at what you're doing and be able to describe your impact to stakeholders. There are lots of private funders who love this kind of impact data, but also allows you to submit for your own grants to expand your services. And we are interested in providers who can do HYPE and career services to expand their services. And we also want to be a thought partner. So we want to hear from you. We hope that you want to hear from us. And together we can actually change services so that young adults aren't seen as having a disability, but just as having a condition that they manage, like other things in your life, right? So we believe that these are the benefits to your organization. And now I am going to turn this over to any questions. I hope that we have some that people are asking. So Marcia, I don't know if you've been able to look as we've been going, if there are any questions.
Yeah, we have a couple, Michelle. So thanks very much for that. This is Marcia Ellison. So one question is to repeat, if you would, the minimum time needed to expected for delivering HYPE per person.
It would be at least 1 year, so depending on when people come into services. Ideally, we'd like to follow people for as long as possible. So the data would be provided to us at minimally for a year. With that said, we presume that most people are providing support education and support employment services. So ideally, if a person continues to need service, you would not end it anyway. So, but a year for people who are involved in the study.
And would that apply to both the people who are in the training sites as well as the research sites?
For the folks who are in training sites hopefully become research sites. And so the expectation is the same. So if you're trained on HYPE, we hope that you provide HYPE services.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another question has to do with whether being on SSI already at entry into the study would be a reason for excluding people from getting HYPE services.
No, we love those folks. We love those folks. We'll help them get off. Nope. All young adults, doesn't matter. I shouldn't say all, because I did list some that would make people ineligible, but that doesn't matter. SSI status doesn't matter.
Okay. So I have one other point that was made, which is that in order to be reimbursed for supported education services in Rhode Island, as in perhaps in many other states, that the individual would need to be on Medicaid. So we are pointing that out. Did we lose you, Michelle?
Marcia.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I had some audio issues. Sorry about that. So the question was, for people in Rhode Island, they must have, and then of course, that's where I dropped. So go ahead. They must have what?
They must, in order to be reimbursed for supported education services and presumably supported employment, they need to be on Medicaid. So we are aware that people are coming in, would only be able to come in if they're Medicaid eligible.
Yeah, so we recognize that lots of programs use Medicaid as a reimbursement mechanism, and that's fine. Some people don't get Medicaid through SSI, so that doesn't exclude people. But what I also hear may be an issue, which is new recruits. So if we recruit folks who do not yet have Medicaid. So one of the things that I would ask of that site and for others are, how do you, when someone comes to you who does not yet have Medicaid, how do you provide services to them? Most organizations now do presumptive eligibility for Medicaid, and if a person meets the criteria for presumptive eligibility, then they can provide services to them. Then the question becomes, how do you get Medicaid? Is it through SSA or is it through other mechanisms? So this would be one of those things, and for those folks who are on the call that this is relevant to, then this is definitely a question that we'll be asking about reimbursement on our individual calls or within your application. And we recognize that this is not an easy, because it's not largely funded and widely funded by state contracts, county contracts, that we need to think about how reimbursement happens. So this is definitely a topic of our interest and will also inform our policy questions. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. That's something to explore, and it is not certainly a disqualifying factor for anybody.
No.
So we have another question. Would you prefer that the young adult work with the same person throughout their time in HYPE? Our program is divided into employment and education, so they may have someone assist them with their college needs and then another person assist them with their employment needs.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. I'm glad that you brought it up. So the way that HYPE is modeled, and this would be a part of training, is that and I'm interested in hearing how other places do it too. We've experimented in community organizations about what works the best. And so we identify what we would consider pathways, an employment pathway or an education pathway. And if people come in the employment pathway, we encourage them to pursue education. This is kind of like our bend, right? So, and that does not necessarily mean college. It could mean certificate. It could mean vocational. So if someone comes in the employment track, we cross-train them in education, because if you're at work, you may have to go back to school, but it's sometimes really disruptive to work with someone else. But if you're going to do a short-term program, then your employment specialist may be the best person suited to support you in that while you're working or while you're going to school, because they know you, they know what kind of accommodations you may need, they know how to best support you. So if you train them a little bit on like, okay, so how do you do this in a program? And then they have a colleague on the education track side, for instance, that can be like, oh, you know, these are some things that are helpful to think about. So we don't necessarily say the same person has to provide services, but if education is a short-term step in the long-term vocational goal at the moment, it may not make sense to transition the person over to support education. And similarly, if someone is a support education provider and this person is a nursing student, let's say, at your local four-year state university, and she wants to, or he wants to get a part-time job being a, you know, a CSA, or a, you know, a med tech, then the support education practitioner may be the person who's best suited to support that employment. You know how they work, you know the type of support they need, kind of the same thing. So you don't want to give up the main support role of employment or education, but you also want to be able to support the other side. Now, there are some people who require significant attention or supports, and that may be the instance where you split it, that someone takes the education and the employment side, and that you have like a team approach, and that has worked well too. So, but we typically think that the fewer disruption in staff, the better. I hope that answers the question.
I think so. So thank you, Michelle. We do have another question. Would organizations need to have physical offices to qualify? Our nonprofit operates remotely in 2 states, and we meet with our students at school and in the community at their convenience.
Oh, I would be happy to think about that and talk about that. So for that organization, that's some of the things that I would want, that I'm interested in hearing about, but also would like be curious about, is how do you meet as a team? So those types of things. Are there any communal spaces, or do you meet virtually via Zoom or GoToMeeting all the time for your team meetings? I don't think it's out of the running for sure. So if practitioners are able to meet people in their community and they have the support that they need from their peers, then space isn't necessarily the issue. For me, the largest mostly care about is being able to meet the student where they need. But I do think that there are unique considerations for staff that are all virtual or remote. But I love that idea.
Okay. So just a similar question to SSI, just to check again, would SSDI be a disqualifier for HYPE services?
No.
Okay.
Won't be a disqualifier.
Great. So here is a comment about healthy transitions, that over the past few years doing healthy transitions, it's been absolutely true that supported employment and supported education should be provided by the same person. But we would have our nurse support people going into a medical field. That makes the case for training the whole team.
Yeah, we typically train the whole team. I agree. So as I had, it depends on the team. So when we have trained PAC or ACT, Assertive Community Treatment, we've trained the whole team. We've made lead providers for vocational. We've trained supported housing. So I think that it's everyone's job. I think that it's hard to do multiple roles well and skilled. So these are the considerations per site, and that's why we have these individual calls with folks. So I don't have hard and fast rules about how many people are trained or who they are, but if it can affect the vocational trajectory of someone and they can provide the service, then I'm interested and open to that discussion. Usually support education and support employment programs, career services are unique programs that then add on to other existing services. But if that's not what you have, I am open to talking about it. So one of the things that I want to make note of that I may not have done well before is that this is an opportunity to think really well and create partnerships, even if it's not for this training, for this project, about how do we create better services for young adults. And so because we have this rigorous study that we have to do, our a sliver for the project may be one thing, but having so many people interested in this topic and who provide services and are interested in providing services provides us with an opportunity to share more information and to know one another and our services a little bit better, so we can inform the field and what are the types of services, the funding mechanisms we need to do our job well. So I appreciate the comments about who should be trained and how things should be trained. If it was up to me, career services would actually be the driver of all services for young adults, because that's what all young adults have in common, is going to work and going to school. Everything else is kind of on the periphery, but needs to be supported. So, I mean, I appreciate everyone's time on this webinar, and I hope that we hear more from you moving forward. And Marcia, was there any last minute or pressing question that you would like to ask before we sign off?
One final quick question. Do the participants have to be enrolled in college, or can they become enrolled while in HYPE?
So we definitely want people enrolled for this trial, but the benefit of having all of your staff trained is that you can apply HYPE to anyone in your program. So people who are interested, you can provide services to them. They wouldn't be in the research study, but now you're a HYPE site. But for the project, people have to be enrolled. They do not necessarily have to currently be in school. So if they've been accepted and they're starting next semester, that would be fine. They have to have intention to go to school and be enrolled in at least 2 classes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, folks. We appreciate you being on the call. We hope to hear from you soon. And if anyone has any needs, please contact us at hype@umassmed.edu, and we will be in contact very, very quickly to answer your questions or to set up a call, whichever you should need. So we appreciate your time. Thank you.